Welcome. Welcome to OldTimers Trivia, the trivia game that pretty much stays in the past. You won't find contemporary music. I may slip once in a while on something, but we're going to be dealing with questions from out of the past. This is the original edition. We have two other editions. We have the Challenge Edition, which is a more difficult version of this same game. And then we have the Quick Edition that's designed for someone who wants to play on their own. The original and the Challenge Edition are designed for group play, so you'll find that we have pauses while teams discuss their options. You'll find that we leave a little time to tally points. But if that drags on too much for you, we have the Quick Edition. Okay, moving forward. This is our setup slide, just to make sure you're seeing everything okay. And here's another setup slide. Now we begin for real. 1. Disney's Davy Crockett. Davy was played by which of these? Moving on to question 2. Who was given the two-way wrist radio in January of 1946 and used it throughout his or her career until it was upgraded? Okay, mark your ballots. Question 3. Which movie won Oscars in the 1939 Academy Awards for the following categories: art direction, film editing, and original musical score? For our sports fans, who was banned from baseball in 1920 after a highly successful 1919 World Series play, including a World Series record with 12 base hits? Who was given a Special Academy Award for Male Juvenile Actor in 1939? Who hosted Queen for a Day? Which president began his career working at the radio station WOC Davenport? Okay, we move on to our answers. Keep track. Disney's Davy Crockett. Davy was played by Fess Parker. Now, Fess, moved on to play Daniel Boone on television, had a successful time there. Here we have a bottle of Fess Parker's wine. Now, Fess bought a winery, ran it for a while, and wasn't very successful. Somebody convinced him to change the name to the Fess Parker Winery, and that was much more successful. Fess said in an interview that he lived, or rather his winery was right next to Neverland, the Michael Jackson property. Said he never got to meet Michael Jackson, but he did wave at him one time. Who was given a two-way wrist radio? Our friend Dick Tracy. Dick had his wrist radio for many years, as the question shows. Authored by Chester Gould. Very successful comic strip for many, many years in the newspapers. And of course there were chapter plays and serials featuring Dick Tracy. A more recent movie, which movie won Oscars? Maybe a surprise for you. All of these films were 1939 films. 1939 was a big year for Hollywood. But the winner of these three Oscars? The Adventures of Robin Hood. Who was banned from baseball in 1920? Shoeless Joe Jackson. Joe was one of a set of 8 people, by the way, who were banned. He wasn't the only one. Who was given a Special Academy Award? Mr. Andy Hardy himself, Mickey Rooney. Who hosted Queen for a Day? Jack Bailey. Which president began his career working at WOC? Ronald Reagan. Give you a moment or two to tally your scores. Are we all tallied? Moving on to round 2. Which magazine printed a centerfold picture of Burt Reynolds? Which book of the Bible is this from? When 2 men are fighting and the wife of one of them intervenes to drag her husband clear of his opponent, if she puts out her hand and catches hold of the man by his privates, you must cut off her hand and show her no mercy. For our biblical scholars out there. It happened at the World's Fair. What city was that set in? Space Mountain is a popular attraction at Disney World. Is there a Space Mountain in Disneyland in California? A yes or no question for you. Question 5. The second wife of the 49th Governor of New York and the 41st Vice President of the United States, Nelson Rockefeller. Her name was... Question 6. Spartacus was best known for... Question 7. Shazam was a term frequently used by one of these people. Moving on to our answer. Cosmopolitan presented Burt Reynolds. Actually, this was after a dare made on a TV talk show, and Burt accepted, and the popularity of this led to the creation of Playgirl. Which book of the Bible? Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy tells it's the recounting of the farewell address by Moses before his people entered the promised land. In that he reminds them of their history, he reviews the laws and encourages them, maybe admonishes them as to the importance of those laws. Clearly, this was one of those laws. Elvis didn't do much out of the country. That was because of the Colonel. This was the Seattle World's Fair. Space Mountain? Yes, there's a Space Mountain at most of the Disney parks around the world. Not all, but most. The second wife of Nelson Rockefeller, she was known as Happy. Spartacus, he was a gladiator who he and two other, he was a slave and a gladiator in Rome, and he and two others led the revolt against Rome, led a large number of slaves and others, and were quite successful in eluding the Roman troops for a number of years, and ultimately, though, was defeated. In fact, there's a great movie starring Kirk Douglas. Certainly a movie I would recommend. It's a number of stars in that movie, including Tony Curtis, for example. Shazam, I had to give you the list here because, who knows? I'm sure there was someone else who used the word Shazam. Now, Gomer was also known for saying golly a lot, but Shazam was one of the terms that he would pop up with. let you tally your scores, give you a moment, see how you're doing. And we will move on. Gypsy Rose Lee was spoiler alert, who dies in Charles Dickens' novel A Tale of Two Cities? As one of our friends pointed out, a lot of people. But here you go. Who dies in Charles Dickens' novel, Tale of Two Cities? Which of the following is a Major League Baseball pitcher, or at least was? Bill Halsey. This is why I don't read the answers to you. We'll give you a minute or two to scurry through them. Moving on. In 399 BC, he went on trial and was subsequently found guilty of both corrupting the minds of the youth of Athens and of impiety, and as a punishment, sentenced to death, caused by the drinking of a mixture containing the poison hemlock. The very first drink he orders in his initial appearance, Casino Royale, is an Americano, a mixture of Campari, Cinzano, and soda water. Alvin York fought in which of the following wars? Okay, moving on. Gypsy Rose Lee, a burlesque entertainer. Actually, when we played this with our friends, somebody said, "Oh, I answered E. I know your fondness for Stan Lee." Well, again, I was reminded when we were playing with our friends, many people died in A Tale of Two Cities. But Sidney Carton, Major League pitcher, Satchel Paige. Admiral Bull Halsey, part of the Battle of Midway, but apparently was bedridden during the battle. In 399 BC, Socrates. The very first drink he orders is an Americano. Probably the book title Casino Royale gave it away. Secret between you and me. In the challenge edition that I do, I take that title out. We'll see how people do with that one. Alvin York fought in World War I. Alvin was out of Tennessee. Initially, he was a conscientious objector, but was convinced that that was not in conflict with his military duty. His group rounded up some German prisoners, and apparently somebody ended up shooting some of his group members, and he was left the senior rank. And then a machine gun nest, German machine gun nest, was out there, and he charged the nest, killed a number of the Germans, convinced the person with the machine gun to surrender, and he came back with, I forget the number, maybe 130 prisoners, 132 prisoners seems to stick in my mind. And he was one of the most decorated soldiers from World War I. Give you a chance to tally. And we'll move on to our bonus question. I guess that's a relatively easy one. TV show Jeopardy had one host during its lifetime, Alex Trebek. Are we ready? The bonus answer. No, he was preceded by Art Fleming. Hope you did well. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook as Old Timers Trivia. Your contributions help keep Old Timers Trivia alive. Please go to DonorBox and support Old Timers. Thank you. Plus, you can visit our Old Timers store on eBay. We put up new items regularly, and you can subscribe to our newsletter on eBay. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget we have the following editions: the original edition for team play, the challenge edition for tougher team play, and the quick edition. The quick edition does not have the delays for group discussion, delays for the tallying of points. It's for someone who wants to play more quickly, maybe playing on their own, and so you have your options. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next game.